Okay, greetings again, everybody. And as you notice, I end up doing a group of these together and just taking one little tidbit and talking about that tidbit before I move to the next one. And I keep working on the lighting and we'll eventually get to the way I like it. But this video is about transforming mindsets. And I'm basically going to compare that process to that of a classical musician or a person who's playing sports. And I can't remember who it is, but there's this one basketball player. He was on the Lakers, LA Lakers. I can't remember his name. Anyway, I remember him doing an interview talking about how he could be so accurate shooting free throws. And he goes, "Oh man, I spent hundreds of hours shooting thousands of free throws from various places. I mean, from the free throw line so that I could get more accurate at what I was doing." And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happens. Transforming mindsets for me is just like practicing scales on an instrument. Now, I've done it the right way and the wrong way. I majored as a clarinetist in college, went all the way through a doctoral degree. So I have quite a bit of knowledge in that department. But when it came to the piano, I taught myself how to play. And I eventually had a few lessons, but I never really played scales and arpeggios. I didn't do as the Aristocats did. You play your scales and arpeggios. But I did on my clarinet. And the difference was that I could play anything written for clarinet. But every time I go play the piano now, and there's a piece of music, I always have to practice the scale in every piece of music. But I don't have to do that when I play the clarinet music because my hands, my brain, my entire being knows how to do that scale. But it also makes sight reading, which sight reading is where you're looking at a piece of music the first time through it. And you don't have to practice because you recognize all the patterns. It's learning to recognize patterns and immediately just stepping into that pattern and doing it. And when I was in college, first thing I do in the morning is get up and spend 4 hours a day in a practice room. And for the first 3 hours, all I did was practice scales and arpeggios. Well, maybe an hour. Played through all my scales and all my arpeggios. And I always did it with a metronome to keep me honest because, metronomes are honest. Our speed is not. So my metronome was my best friend. And when I was learning a piece of music, I would take the metronome speed down below what I felt comfortable with playing it. And then I'd play all the hard licks first and then work up the speed on those hard ones. And then eventually add other licks and things, licks, we call them that, phrases, passages, technical passages that were hard to play. I would add those in as I would speed up. Okay, what I was doing there was I was transforming my mindset, but I was also transforming my physical body. I was training my body and my brain to do what was on the sheet music. Okay, so now let's take a look at transforming your mindsets of how you think about things. I took that principle and applied it to what I do every day in life, especially when leaving the marriage. And if you want to read about it, the book is called But Words Will Never Hurt Me. It's on Amazon. And that title should tell you what the book is about. But Words Will Never Hurt Me. And the follow-up book, the second in the series, is called Transforming Mindsets. What do you know? I had to retrain my brain how to function from the very basics of thought processes. It's kind of like when a student came to me and they had learned a passage wrong and they were playing all these wrong notes. And I'm like, okay, what I did is I would back up back the student up and say, okay, we're going to bring it down to a really slow metronome speed. But I would have them do a couple other little games and things before that to make sure it was the new pattern was somewhat in their fingers first. Then we would start the whole metronome building process up again, just like I explained to you earlier, because I had to reframe, retrain, rewire the brain to do something different than it had been done before. And that happens, getting things wrong when we work through something too fast. As I explained, in students who came in, had practiced the wrong notes all week long and had started wanting to move the metronome faster than it should have been, then they come to their lesson and realize, oh crap, I'm playing all the wrong notes. I'm like, yeah, well, let's fix it. And eventually they learned how to tell what was going on. But that is no different than how we transform our mindsets in our real life. So after I left the marriage, I had to back a lot of things up, going back into what I originally believed before, and retrain my brain to think a different way. Because I'd come into agreement with lies and with stuff said about me that wasn't true. And then I began to believe those things. And then I started acting out those things. Then I didn't have a hope for the future. Then I didn't know what I wanted to do. Oh, and then my body got sick in the middle of all that because my emotions were so screwed up that my body was like, they had no choice but to come into alignment with what my emotional state was. So I was in that same place that a student has come to me learning a passage wrong, and I have to completely fix it. So I literally stripped everything down to nothingness and started from scratch. And with the same amount of precision. Now, I realize that not everybody has the ability to do that, but classical musicians, we have to. Otherwise, you don't get good at what you're doing. And I always tell people, the more you work on something and the more consistent that you do it by practicing with patience and perseverance, the quicker the results are going to be. This haphazard every other day, when I feel I'm going to get to it, that there's not a lot of forward motion there. It's like you have to hammer something until you get to that point where your brain, your heart, all of that stuff is coming into agreement. And then it takes even longer for the body to line up. Because even though I'd been practicing this for, I think it was 5 years, I'd been practicing it before the body finally let go of that sickness that it had. Now it was on its way there because I'd been doing some things, but it was this last step of this intensity of just changing so many other things in that mindset transformation process that finally the cells in the body were beginning to come into alignment with what was being spoken and the changes that I was putting into my system. And again, I go through that in more detail in the Transforming Mindsets book. Now, I don't recommend that you read, but Words Will Never Hurt Me, unless you are in a situation like that, because I don't know. I mean, it took me a long time. I just didn't want to put the book out there because it's not who I am. But at the same point, we learn from where we came from. And I realized I'm not that person anymore. Isn't that awesome? Because I changed my mindset and I'm somebody new now, was able to completely reverse everything that was going on. And I'm 25 years older now than I was then. And I'm healthier. Now, according to modern thinking, that shouldn't happen. But, age is just a number. Age is what we make it. If you want to change your mindset, it's going to take practice, patience, and perseverance with consistency. And if I can do it, so can you. And your route might be slightly different than mine. But the key is enjoy the journey. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the comments below. something doesn't make sense, I do try to answer my YouTube comments when I can. All righty, that's it for this one. And I don't know what the next series is going to be yet, but you'll see soon enough. Thank you for listening, and make sure you subscribe and share these videos if they're helpful for you.